We've all felt it, that gnawing emptiness that creeps in when we least expect it, that familiar ache of loneliness, a feeling that can be as fleeting as a passing cloud or as persistent as a shadow. It's a natural human emotion that washes over us from time to time, reminding us of our need for connection and belonging. But in today's world, this feeling is reaching epidemic proportions. It's no longer just an occasional visitor, it's becoming a constant companion for many. It's no longer a fleeting experience that we can easily shake off. Instead, it's becoming a chronic condition that lingers and festers. More and more people are finding themselves trapped in a persistent state of loneliness, feeling isolated even in the midst of a crowd. This growing sense of isolation is not just a personal struggle, it's a societal crisis that affects us all. Loneliness doesn't discriminate, it affects people of all ages, backgrounds and walks of life. From the young to the old, from the rich to the poor, no one is immune. It can strike anyone, anywhere, at any time. The young professional constantly on the move, the elderly widow living alone, the student lost in a sea of faces. The young professional constantly on the move, juggling a hectic schedule and endless responsibilities, often finds themselves feeling disconnected and alone. The elderly widow, once surrounded by loved ones, now faces long days and nights in solitude, yearning for companionship and conversation. The student, surrounded by peers and technology, still feels an overwhelming sense of isolation, struggling to find meaningful connections in a digital world. The digital age, while connecting us virtually, often leaves us feeling more disconnected than ever. Social media, once a tool for bringing people together, can sometimes amplify feelings of loneliness and inadequacy. This epidemic of loneliness is not just an emotional burden, it's a public health crisis with serious consequences. Studies have shown that chronic loneliness can lead to a range of health issues, from depression and anxiety to heart disease and a weakened immune system. It's a public health crisis with serious consequences. The impact of loneliness extends beyond the individual, affecting families, communities and society as a whole. It's time we recognize its severity and take action. We need to understand the roots of this epidemic and find ways to combat it. We need to understand the roots of this epidemic and find ways to combat it. Our collective well-being depends on it. We need to reclaim our sense of connection. We need to create a world where people feel seen, heard, and valued. This is not just about individual responsibility. It requires a collective effort from individuals, communities, and policymakers alike. We need to reclaim our sense of connection. We need to create a world where people feel seen, heard, and valued. We need to create a world where people feel seen, heard, and valued. This is not just about individual responsibility, it requires a collective effort from individuals, communities and policymakers alike. We need to build bridges and combat the loneliness epidemic together. It requires a collective effort from individuals, communities and policymakers alike. We need to build bridges and combat the loneliness epidemic together. It's time to build bridges and combat the loneliness epidemic together. By fostering a sense of community and connection, we can create a world where no one has to feel alone. The statistics on loneliness paint a stark picture. They reveal a troubling trend that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. It's a global issue affecting millions, cutting across all demographics and regions. No one is immune to the pervasive feeling of loneliness. In the United Kingdom, studies show that over 9 million people often or always feel lonely. This is a staggering number that represents a significant portion of the population. That's nearly 14% of the population, a figure that underscores the widespread nature of this issue. The numbers are equally concerning in the United States, with over 40% of adults reporting feeling lonely. This means that nearly half of the adult population is grappling with feelings of isolation. These figures represent a significant portion of the population struggling with social isolation. The impact of this is profound, affecting mental health, physical well-being, and overall quality of life. But these numbers only tell part of the story. The true extent of loneliness is often hidden beneath the surface. Loneliness is often a hidden epidemic. Many people suffer in silence, reluctant to admit their feelings. People are reluctant to admit they feel lonely. They fear being judged or stigmatized, which only exacerbates their isolation. They fear judgment and stigma. This social stigma makes it difficult to accurately measure the true extent of the problem. Many cases go unreported and the silent sufferers remain hidden. However, the available data clearly indicate a growing crisis. The rates of loneliness have been steadily increasing over the years, signaling a need for urgent intervention. Loneliness is not confined to any particular geographic region. It affects people in cities, towns, and rural areas alike. It's a universal human experience that transcends borders. Regardless of where you are, the feeling of loneliness can strike. From the bustling cities of Asia to the rural towns of America, people are yearning for connection. This longing for human interaction is a fundamental aspect of our nature. It's a shared experience that unites us in our vulnerability. Recognizing this shared vulnerability is the first step towards addressing the issue. These statistics are a wake-up call. They serve as a stark reminder that we need to take action. They highlight the urgent need for action. We must come together to find solutions that foster connection and community. We need to address the root causes of loneliness and create societies that foster connection. This involves creating environments where people feel valued and included. Ignoring this epidemic will have far-reaching consequences for our health, well-being, and social fabric. The time to act is now, before the situation worsens. It's important to distinguish between being alone and feeling lonely. You can be surrounded by people and still feel utterly alone. Conversely, you can be physically alone and feel perfectly content. Loneliness is not about the quantity of social interactions, it's about the quality of those connections. Loneliness is a subjective experience. It's a feeling of disconnect from others, a lack of belonging. It's the feeling of being unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. It's a yearning for meaningful relationships and a sense of community. Some people thrive in solitude. They find peace and contentment in their own company. They value their independence and enjoy spending time alone. This is perfectly healthy and should not be confused with loneliness. Loneliness is not about enjoying solitude. It's about feeling isolated and disconnected, despite your circumstances. Understanding this distinction is crucial. It helps us recognize that loneliness is not simply about being alone. It's about the quality of our relationships and our sense of belonging. We need to create a society that fosters genuine connection and allows individuals to feel seen and valued for who they are. Only then can we truly address the loneliness epidemic. Loneliness is not a weakness or a personal failing. It's a universal human experience that everyone encounters at some point in their lives. This feeling of isolation can be overwhelming, but it's important to understand that it's not a reflection of your worth or capabilities. It's a deeply rooted biological mechanism, much like hunger or thirst. Just as our bodies signal us when we need food or water, loneliness is a signal that we need social connection. It's an intrinsic part of our human nature. Just as we experience physical pain to alert us to injury, loneliness serves a similar purpose. It acts as an emotional pain that alerts us to a deficiency in our social connections. We experience emotional pain to signal a threat to our social well-being. This pain is not just metaphorical. It has real, tangible effects on our mental and physical health. Our brains are wired for connection. Neuroimaging studies have shown that the same areas of the brain that light up when we experience physical pain also activate when we feel socially rejected or isolated. For our ancestors, being part of a group was crucial for survival. In the harsh environments they lived in, cooperation and social bonds were essential for finding food, shelter, and protection from predators. It provided safety, support, and access to resources. Those who were socially connected were more likely to survive and pass on their genes, making social bonds a key aspect of human evolution. Loneliness served as a warning sign that we were becoming socially isolated, putting us at risk. This feeling would prompt individuals to seek out and repair their social connections, ensuring their survival and well-being. This primal instinct for connection is still present today. Despite the modern world's complexities, Our need for social bonds remains unchanged. We thrive on interactions, shared experiences, and the sense of belonging that comes from being part of a community. When we feel lonely, our bodies release stress hormones like cortisol. These hormones are part of our body's fight or flight response, preparing us to deal with perceived threats. These hormones trigger a cascade of physiological responses designed to motivate us to seek connection. Elevated cortisol levels can lead to increased heart rate, heightened alertness, and a sense of urgency to reconnect with others. It's our body's way of prompting us to reconnect with others and repair our social bonds. By reaching out, we can alleviate the stress and anxiety associated with loneliness, restoring our sense of well-being. This biological understanding of loneliness helps us see it in a new light. Recognizing it as a natural response rather than a personal failing can reduce the stigma and encourage more compassionate approaches to addressing it. It's not a personal flaw, but a natural human response to a perceived threat to our social well-being. Understanding this can empower us to take proactive steps to combat loneliness and build stronger social networks. By understanding the evolutionary roots of loneliness, we can begin to develop more effective strategies to address it. This includes fostering environments that encourage social interaction and support. We need to recognize our innate need for connection and create societies that support and nurture those bonds. By doing so, we can improve not only individual well-being, but also the health and resilience of our communities as a whole.